Hello, folks. Greetings. Welcome back to the class. Today, I actually, with the previous class, if you remember, that we calculated the payment amount using VBA. We didn't use Excel. And here's the formula. I took the same page, right? And by the way, there are a few things that I want to let you know, right? If you have a macro in a workbook, Excel saves them as XLSM. Okay, generally, if it is a Excel worksheet, we save it as .xlsx, right? But if there is a macro, it will say XLSM. And also, when you save your file that way and when you open it, Excel will give a warning that, hey, there is a macro in this workbook. Okay, and the reason why it gives the warning is, there may be some malicious macro in a workbook. Okay, so only when you enable it, it will enable. Okay, and at some point of time, I'll show you when I open a XLSM file what happens. Okay, but that's not important. So I took it and I modified few things here so today what we are going to learn is that in your VBA programming, how do you do the same thing for n number of times or x number of times, right? Because if you want to build a mortgage schedule or a loan payment schedule, you'll have to repeat the same thing down for many rows, right? Depending on the number of months you're paying. So you got to do the same thing repeatedly. How do we do it? And in programming terms, it is called as a loop, okay? Because you're looping through the same thing. And I will tell you this, that if you want to be a skilled programmer, if you can learn and understand how this looping works, okay, that is really very powerful, okay? And then, just to make things, if you're learning how to loop over things, you also need to learn how to branch based on certain condition. That is, in your program, you want to branch between conditions, right? And in order to do that, in order to show you how branching works, I added a new field, a calculated field called decision, okay? Now, this decision will be based on that, let's say that you have a monthly budget, okay? Let's say that your monthly budget or how much you can pay every month for this loan is certain number, okay? Let's say that it's $2,000 or $3,000. Now, for you, irrespective of what kind of loan you get, you will have to keep that loan under your budget. So the decision to pursue the loan or not is based on whether the final calculated monthly payment is greater than or less than certain number. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate how you program that. So if you learn those two things, what happens is you've learned two very powerful programming construct that will be useful throughout your career. Okay. Now I will put it this way, that some people think that they are allergic to programming because of some of the math involved, or they're allergic to programming because instead of, and I've seen this with many engineering students, where instead of visually seeing what's going on with programming, you're abstractly thinking what's going on, right? But guess what? With Excel, you are visually seeing some of the things. So that is really useful, right? That is really interesting. But I will put it this way, programming or math is not something very complicated. We made it complicated by adding a lots of jargon and not clearly explaining why you're doing certain things. Why I'm saying it's not complicated is programming as well as math is life. I mean, we take these decisions in life very regularly, right? We go to grocery shopping, we add up numbers, we see time, we check the date. These are all complex mathematical things. We automatically do that because that's how our brain works, right? The same thing with programming is that you give a kid an instruction or somebody an instruction. That is programming. So it's simple. So don't, in your mind, don't get scared. That's very, very important, because a lot of people feel scared or they already decide that I can't do it and then they don't do it, right? And of course, I'm going to explain everything to you. You have the YouTube comment section. You can ask any questions, I'll answer, and then we'll go from there, okay? But I'm jumping into, so here's the thing, right? I'm not going to bore you with classes where we go after, every academic thing, right? In Excel VBA. That's not what I want to do. I want to be really practical, right? Now, that's why I showed you this loan calculation thing, because this is really practical. You can use it for your own decisions, right? So that's why I selected this. So therefore, I'm not. So here's the thing. At the end of this courses, you can go to Google and find out, hey, in Excel VBA, how do you do various things? Right? It's very easy. But in order to understand the concept, I want to take something practical, and then so you can play around with something which is practical, and then we can go from there. Now, at some point, I will also take these Excel programs and put it in some place where you can actually download it. I've not yet decided where to put that, but I will put that at some point. Okay. Okay, so there are a few things that the goal today is basically we need to build a mortgage schedule, and also we need to build the totals of how much interest did you pay, or how much interest you are going to pay, and how much principal you're going to pay for any kind of loan term, okay, any number of years, right? Because the first lesson, if you know that in order to change that the number of payments dynamically, there is an Excel way to do it. I'll tell you very clearly, okay? But we are going to use a programming way to do that so that you can learn a VBA, right? Okay. So a little bit more explanation. I'm also put the input as a start date, or when you're going to start the loan, because we need to put that in here, and I want the users to input that in the beginning. This program is going to be the same. The payment calculation is going to be the same, so I'm going to leave that alone. The program is still there, right? The macro is still there. We're going to do the decisions. And if you see what we need to do programmatically is we got to put the date, the month, and the loan amount. Then you're going to calculate the interest paid for that loan within that monthly payment, right? Then you're going to say how much principal you're paying. So how much interest you're paying, how much principal you're paying, right? And the balance remaining, okay? And to make, so, I think this is good because you know all the payment. I was thinking, should I put a column for payment? But I don't think so. You already know what the payment is, right? So this is what we're going to calculate for that number of months, right? Whatever the number of months is. And then at the end of it, we're going to put the totals for, hey, what's the principal? What's the interest you paid so far, okay? That's pretty much what we are going to do. Okay. Let's see. So let me go look at the macro. So this is the macro we have, right? This is the one we used. And of course, this one, in the very beginning, it calculates the payment value. Okay, this is the payment value. Now I want to really populate like a go or a no go decision based on how much is that payment. And I'm thinking that there's no harm in putting like a max value, right? A max budget. And let me go back here, format it exactly the same. And that is also an input, okay? The max budget is also an input. So basically what I will do is if the user enters the max budget, then I can make a decision whether you're going to go for the loan or don't go for the loan, okay? As in go or a no go decision. I'm just going to print go or no go, okay? Okay, let's go back to the macro, edit it, and that's the first thing we're going to do, okay? The first thing is actually simple. If you know how to take decisions in Excel VBA, how to take decisions in programming, right? In programming, in any programming language, by the way, there is this construct called if then or if then else or if else, right? So you have a mathematical expression, a comparison expression like greater than, less than, equals, and you want to do something if it is true and you want to do something else if it is false. How do you do that? It's very simple. In Excel you just say if and you put the condition. The condition here is, I'm just going to put range, sorry, here you're going to use the range function, and the range of I think it's I8 is where the max budget is, right? Well, first you need to compare the monthly payment. So I'm going to put the, well, let me do it this way. That's easier. So I'm going to put PMT, that is the payment, is greater than, okay? You use the mathematical greater than symbol. And now you need to use the range function. Range of, the range here is what? That is I8, okay? So I'm going to put I8 dot value. It's complaining because I need to add more, okay? So in Excel, what you do is you put the condition, then you use a word called then. If payment is greater than range function of that thing dot value, then now you put in whatever you want to put in, right? What I need to do is that basically I'm going to take the range of E, and that is E13. So if it is greater than that, right, you're just going to put the value in quotes as no go. Okay, that means you don't want to pursue the loan. Now, otherwise, and for that you use the command else. Else you do want to go, right? And then just to end this, so basically in Excel, you're just using one statement. You don't have to do this, but I generally do it because if you want to do a bunch of things if that condition is true, and a bunch of things if that condition is not true, then you will have to do this. So there is a thing called end if. So you can do end if. That just tells Excel that hey, that's the end of it. Okay. So this is the decision you're taking. Go for it or don't go for it. Okay. Now let's test this and see how this works. Okay. Now, let's first test it. Then I will show you one more thing. So I'm going to put the max budget as $1,500, right? And then I'm going to run the macro. Well, it says overflow. Let's see what happened. This one says overflow. Let's see. Oh yeah, I think the addresses have changed a little bit. So let me go and fix those addresses because from the last time I didn't change the range addresses, right? But I changed the format a little bit, so the addresses are changed. So that's why. So the reason why it's saying overflow is some value is zero, so you're dividing something with zero, so you're overflowing, right? But you just saw how we do the debug. Excel complains that hey, something's wrong. We say debug, and then it tells you which line has a problem. Okay, you do this in programming all the time. So what happened is I think the p value, which is the principal, is not D2 anymore. It's actually E2, right? So I'm just going to change that to E2. And the years is E4 instead of D4. And same thing, that I think the interest is E6. And instead of H6, which is I think the rate, right, rate per month, it should be what, I4, no, rate per month, sorry. I think it's rate per month is I6, so I gotta put I6 here. And I think that one is the number of months, N is I4. Okay, so I'm changing a bunch of addresses so that they work okay. I think those things are okay. And then the payment itself is now in E8, right, instead of D8. Okay, I think the rest is fine. Okay, now let me run the macro. Okay, so it says no go. Okay, you see that it says no go. That's because my budget is $1,500, but the payment is $1,897, and therefore I can't do it. Right now, maybe if I change the years to 25 years, and I go back to the macro and run it, and even if it is 25 years, it's actually $1,600, so it's not going to work. So let me do 35 years. So now the monthly payment is $1,419, and the budget, it's less than the budget, so you can go for the loan. See, So this is how you test your program. You find out what's going on. Okay. The next thing what I want to do is I want to show you how the loop works. And for that, what I'm going to do is that if the person says, if they put a date here, right? If they put a date here, a start date, the first thing I will do is that whatever this number is, for the number of months, I want to fill this column with the dates, where every month, whatever the date, you're going to pay that money, right? Now, I'm pretty sure this is already, well, this is not yet in date format, so I'll change that to date format just to make things look good. Let's see, where's the format cells. I'm just going to say that is a date. Okay. Now, I already, before we started the class, I made all these things of the right format, right? I made this as date, these as accounting, and this obviously is just a general number. Okay. Okay. So now we are going to, so the user is going to input a date, and we are going to fill this date, just the date column, nothing else, for the number of months. Okay. Whatever that number of months is. Okay. So how do we do it? Let's go to developer, macro, edit. Okay. And the one thing I need to explain to you is that, as I said, that hey, this is a subroutine, right? That means it's a piece of code. Now, as you write your programs, you will start seeing that your code is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's hard to read. Now, when the code is bigger, you can actually write like how the range function is. You can actually write your own function or your own subroutine and call them here so that your program looks a little manageable. Now we will do that at some point, but right now I'm not going to do anything, right? Now I'm going to introduce you to a specific kind of loop called in Excel VBA. It's called as for in loop. Okay. What do you mean by for in loop? Basically, I'm going to give a range, and I'm going to say that, hey, Excel, go after each cell in that range and do something about it. Okay. Okay. So in order to do that, there's some very interesting thing that's going to go on. Right now, if you take the date field itself, you need to start with A19, correct? By the way, when things get really hard for you to, you're clicking on macro all the time, there's a way in Windows where you can do the window and the left arrow key, and then put your Excel in the right side, right? So this way you can see both your program and your Excel sheet in the same in the same window. So I just did that so that you're splitting the window into two, and then you can see both at the same time, so that you don't have to click on macros and edit this program again and again to see the program. Okay, so I want to put the program this side. Okay. So now let's figure out how to do this loop, right? And generally, when you're doing programming, what you got to do is that you kind of need to calculate. Even though you don't know the commands and stuff, you don't know the syntax, it's better to just understand how you're going about doing it, right? So we said that the user will input their start date here. And I think one easy thing we can do is, as soon as the user enters the start date, in our program, we can just copy that start date to the A19 cell, right? And that should be quite easy to do. So we'll do that first. And the way you do that is, let's say you just need to say range A19 dot value equals range I2 dot value. And there may be other ways to do it, but I'm just going to copy the value that's in range I2 to the range A19. That's very simple. Okay. Now, once you copy it, in your loop, what you will be doing, okay, all you will be doing is you'll be taking the previous date, adding a month to it, and then saving it in the current cell, right? So go to the previous cell, copy that value, add a month to it, and save it to the current cell. Okay, this is what we need to do. So that means inside the loop, my previous cell keeps changing. That's one important thing that you need to understand, that my previous cell is changing. So the first time my previous cell will be A19. The second time my previous cell will be A20. The next time my previous cell will be A21. You got it? Like that. So, and then the other thing is, while in my loop, I also need to select my current cell, right? So to do all these things, there is a syntax in Excel. It's called as a for each loop. Okay. Now, when you do these kind of repeated things, you use loops. And in any programming language, there are 4 or 5 ways in which you can do these loops. But for the purpose that we are doing, the best kind of loop syntax that we're going to use is the for each one. Okay. So how do I do for each? Is very simple. You do for each. Okay. For each what? For each date object. This is you're coming up with your own name. Okay. It's a variable, right? So for each data object in range. And remember that generally we used range to go to one cell, but you can actually specify multiple cells. And the way you specify it is exactly the way you specify ranges in Excel, which is basically you put a colon. So you can say, for example, from A20 to A25, let's say. Okay. So I'm going on each data object from A20 to 25. So that means it will copy the data object for each range. It's just the object. Remember that it's not the value, it's just the object. And it will keep going if you put a next command here. Okay. So in other words, whatever you put, whatever commands you put, whatever statements you put between that for each line and the next line will be repeatedly executed. So in this case, it will be executed from 20 till 25. You got it? That's why it's a loop. Okay. So you're going over each object, and I started with 20 because 19 is already occupied based on our previous statement, right? So whatever is in I2 gets copied to 19. That's already done. So that's why I went to the A20. So In A20, what date I should add? I should get the previous date object and then do something with it, right? What is my first previous date object? That is A19. So I am going to create a variable called, let me do this way, okay? I'm going to define a date where previous, I'll just put p date object, okay? As you call that as date, okay, because that's the type of variable I'm creating. And to this variable, I am assigning the A19. I'm assigning the A19 object. Okay, so I'm just copying this to a variable, and I'll tell you why we are copying it. Because that variable is going to change. Variable means things changing, right? Remember. So for each of the date object, what am I going to do? So I need to add a month to that previous date and then save it in the current date, right? That's what I need to do. How do I do it? Okay. So there is a function called dateAdd. This function is like your range function. Remember that we are using many functions in Excel. So there is one function called dateAdd. And in the dateAdd, what we can do is we need to specify what part of the date you're adding anything, right? And in my case, I'm adding to the month, and so I can just use this string called em, right? And then how much I'm adding? I'm just adding 1 month. So I'm just going to put 1. And to which date object you're adding? You're adding to the previous date object. Now remember that is the previous date object, but I got to get the value from it, right? So I think I made a mistake here, is that the date object is the value, not the cell, right? Okay. So that's what I'm doing. I'm adding 1 day to the previous date object, just the variable, right? I've not touched the A19 cell. Just to the variable, I'm adding 1 month to it. And so now my p date object will have 1 more month added from what was already there in A19. And then what I do is that I take the current date object and its value is nothing but the p date obj, okay? Because that's what I calculated, I got it. So now I cannot stop here. So the moment I've set the value for 20, for example, then that p date object now becomes the date object. What I'm saying is p date obj is really the date objs. Well, I'm trying to think. Well, because since I added a month, the date object is already added a month, so I don't think I need to do anything. Okay. I was thinking that I got to reassign what is the previous date object, but previous date object is already added 1 month, right? So, and that's the deal, right? The variables never change inside the loop. So that means previous date object keep adding 1 each time, right? And then it's setting the value to the current date object. Okay, so now let's see how it works. Let's see if it even works. Let's go to the macro. First thing is I got to put the date here because otherwise it will get confused. So let me put first, let me put something simple. February, okay. Cancel this. Okay. 2, 1. Let's do, just to make it interesting. 5th of February. Okay. Every 5th of February, I'm going to pay for it. Okay. Pay my loan. Okay. So 2/5/2024 is when my loan date starts. Okay. Now let me run the macro. Okay. So it says can't execute code in break mode. What happened? Okay, maybe I need to stop this. Okay. So some code was running before, so that's why it was compliant. Let me run again. So now it says method range object. Okay, where is the problem? Yeah, this is the problem because I forgot to put the quote. Put the quote, and now you see that there is a thing, right? I need to click on that to reset my code. So I didn't do that last time. So okay, so that's a known error. That's not a problem. Let's run it again. Okay. So what happened? So 2/5 got copied, but it doesn't look like it copied the month. So that one, I don't know why it didn't do it, because we added a month. It's just copying the same object again and again. Maybe I got to give. I was thinking that it was adding to that month. Yeah, that makes sense, because after the date is added, that becomes the pdate object, right? Okay. Okay. So what I'm saying is this function returns a date object that is 1 month older. Okay. And so I didn't assign it. I just said add it, right? It might ask me to put parentheses. Let me put parentheses because I'm assigning stuff to it. And if I use parentheses, I'm just going to put it like that. Okay. Okay, I think that will work. Let me again delete these and start from the beginning. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to stop that, reset it, go to the macro, run it. Okay, so now it works. Did it work the way I expected? Yes, it worked the way I expected, right? So because month is first, so it went 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and it filled it up, right? Okay, now you might say that, well, that is well and good, but I need to fill it up for 420 months, not just these number of months, right? That means what I'm trying to say is that my end range is really unknown. Okay. Well, end range is not, it's not like it's unknown, it's just I need to calculate, right? And how do I calculate it? All I got to do is I need to take the 820 and add 419 to it, correct? One less, because one is already occupied. So I just need to say that, hey, start from 820 and then go all the way to 820 plus 419. So that means my range is really dynamic, right? So how do I achieve a dynamic range? It's very, very easy. I'll show you. See, remember that this is a string, right? And you can actually, in Excel, you can form strings dynamically. What do you mean by that? Okay, I'll tell you what I mean by that. Okay, so, and by the way, sometimes when you're writing these programs this way, remember that you declared a variable this way. It's always a better practice to declare it on the top. So I'm going to take these and put it at the very top. So you know all the variables that you're using, right? Now we need to use additional variables here. Okay, the one variable I need to use is that, so I need to know at what point I need to start. What is my start date, right? What is my start number? Okay, and then I need to know what is my end number, correct? So I know that the start number, and I'm going to define those here. And I'm going to put like start n as integer and end dimension and n as integer. Okay, and then we will calculate that right here. So we know start n is actually 20, correct? Okay, that's where we are starting. That's why I just put start n as 20. Okay. And then what will be the end n? End n will be 20 plus whatever value we see as number of months minus 1. Okay, so again you calculate that, you put that in, you say end n equals start n plus this value, which is I4 value, right? So it's range I4 dot value. Okay, that value, and then you need to subtract with that minus 1 to take care of that, the 19 that we have, right? So you subtract 1. Okay, so that's the end n. But you might ask that, hey, that's fine, you found out what the 20 is and what that last range is, but my range address is actually a string with a in it, right? How do I make that string? Again, I am going to put another dimension called range str, stands for range string. See, these names you come up with, as long as you can, and I'm putting understandable names so that, after 1 month, somebody is telling that, hey, fix this program or add a feature to it. When you go and look at the program, you should remember what you're trying to do, because already it's becoming, the code is got quite complex, right? But right now, I'm just going to call it as range string, and that is another data type called string. Okay, so Excel has this data type called string. String is nothing but string. Okay, anything in quote. So once I got that, now I need to build that range string. So I got the start number and end number. I got to build that string. And how do I build a string? Very, very simple. Whatever you want to have, like for example, in our case, it is A, correct? You see the A here. And after that, it's the start number, right? Now, so that means I need to concatenate A with a number. How do I do that? It's very simple. I mean, I know that in Excel you have a concatenate function, if you remember. But as a shortcut for that, you just put an and, the and symbol, and now you put the start number. Okay, now that string is A20. Got it? So now again, it doesn't end there. There's a colon and an A and then the end number, right? So again, put an and. I usually give spaces between these operators, and again an a colon and A, right? And then put an and you put the end number. See, this now will be the dynamic range, A20 till whatever the number of months that you calculated. That is the dynamic range, right? So now it's very simple. Instead of putting range A20 to A25, you copy that variable range string and put it in here. Okay, and when you're putting the variable, you don't have to put it in quotes, right? That's pretty much it. Once you do that, now our same program will work for 420 months. Now I need to reduce the number to a smaller number just for us to, I don't want 420, I don't want to scroll down for 420 rows, but I do need to know that there is 420 values that is placed, okay? And in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these values. Delete that. And I'm wondering that it may be better for me to test if there is 420 items. Maybe I also need to populate the month, which is very easy, right? It's just a number, the month number, right? Let me do that. That's very easy. Month number as integer. And I defined a month number. And of course, in the very beginning, I do need to populate the month number. So I will say month number is actually 1. And then range. It's not A19, but it's C19. Range C19 dot value is actually the month number. Okay, range C19 is actually the value, which is the month number. Now, what I can do in the same loop, right? What I can do is I can increment the month number. So I can say, hey, the month number is whatever is the current month number plus 1. Okay. So I want you to understand what I've done. I've taken the variable month number. I'm taking whatever the value of month number is and adding a 1. Okay. And then all I got to do is that in that range object, so I got for each range object, and I got the range object here, right? But for the month number alone, the range object will be it's not this range object, it's another range object, right? So I probably need to get to the range object in a different way. Let me do that. Let me see. If I do month number, Okay, let me put month. So I do need a variable for that. We define a variable here. I'm going to call it as month address, okay, because it's a range address, and that is a string again. Now, I want to make it clear, defining these variables on the top is good practice. You really don't need to define variables at all, right? The fact that I'm defining these variables is just a good practice, so that I know that what variables am I defining for this function. But you can directly come up with a name called month address and start working on it, right? VBA is flexible that way. So I'm going to take that variable and I'm using the same technique. It is a C, correct? It is C, and the value will be, so remember that when the month number was 1, the range was 19, right? Okay, when the month number is 1, the range is 19. Now you added a month number, which is, right now it will be 2, okay? So I think what we got to do is we can do, I need to put an and symbol. So now I got to do a calculation, and since it's a calculation, I'm using parentheses, okay? So it is basically 18 plus month number. And tell me if the calculation is right. It is right? Because month number will be 2. So now in the first time in the loop, the month number will be 20. Next time in the loop, it will be 21. Because month number is being incremented every time it goes through the loop. So now, as the month number is incremented, I'm also incrementing the month address. Got it? Okay. So now I can say range of month address dot value, okay, is actually equal to the month number. So we are doing two things within the loop, okay? We are setting the data object by adding one month to it. We are also adding the month number and setting the month number within the loop. So like that you can do many things. I mean, in fact, once you understand this pattern, you can even calculate loan amount, everything else, right? But I just want to make sure that, and here's the thing, right? When you write coding, that's the thing. You don't have to be very precise. You start with something, and over time you can correct it and clean it up and make sure that it looks okay. Now, of course, somebody who's looking at this whole code from the very beginning is going to be a little bit confused, but we can explain how to write this, right? And hopefully, that's what I'm thinking, that I'll probably put all this code somewhere and share it with you all, so that you can compare with your own version, right? I'm expecting that you're following as I'm typing in this video. You're following along on what I'm trying to do. And I will put it this way, you just cannot watch this. You will have to do on your own. You try this, and in fact you may come up with some better ways to do this, right? But you got to try this on your own and run it and see how your program works, okay? Well, but that said, let's see how our program works. Let me go back to the macros. I think I did already reset this. Macros. run it. Okay, it populated it. Let's see if our program worked. So the good thing is the month numbers are coming incremented properly. The date is getting incremented properly. Another thing is it's switching over years. Now what I wanted is I didn't change that 420. So if I scroll down all the way, does it end in 420 is what we got to make sure so that our calculation is right. Well, no, it ended in 421. You see that? It ended in 421. And I think that's really because, let me start here. The start number we took is 20. But in the very beginning, we are already doing 20, correct? This is already done, right? So, therefore, it has to be -2, not -1, okay? -2. And now let's clear this up. And that's another important thing too, that when you're and I should have mentioned this before. So when you're coding and recoding, that your previous runs, if there is some data there, it has to be cleaned up. It has to be cleared, right? And there is a very, very easy way to clear your whole range, okay? Using the range function, you can actually clear the whole thing very, very easily, okay? Because so the start number here is 20. So from 20 till the end number, you could have cleared the range, right? Right now, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to use the arrow key. Hold on. I'm just going to clear it manually because I don't want to introduce more code than is necessary, and then maybe in the next class I'll show you how to programmatically clear these cells, right? And it's really simple, but I just don't want to introduce too many concepts in the same class. Let me go back here. I should do Control Shift and down arrow key and delete these, okay? So that clears it off. Same thing, Control Shift down arrow key, delete it. Delete it. Escape and delete it. Okay, I deleted these. Let me go back. Okay, so the data is clear. I just change the end value to be -2. Okay, I think that will work. Let me see now. Reset everything, macros, run. Okay, let's now go and see. Okay, 420 is good. It just populated 420, but that's really not a big deal, right? Let me reset it again. I should teach you how to clear these values automatically. I'll teach that in the next class. But right now you can use Control Shift down arrow key, select everything and press the delete key for clearing up. What I mean is that, so if I change this to, like, say 15 months, right? That means this number of months is going to change. And also my date and month should be dynamically changing, right? That's the purpose of this program. So let's check that out. So 15 months is only 180 months. And so I should be populated only until 180, not beyond that, right? And it's doing it, okay? So that's really good. That's what we learned. And I do want to, well, let me not do that. Let's do that in the next class because there's too many things that I've already done in this class. Okay. Let me go back and go through the code a little bit. So we are using this dim and various types of variable names. Variable names are named by you. They are defined by you. And each of these variable names have a type of that variable. Okay. and we have already dealt with currency, double, integer, and string. String we introduced it today. Okay. We also went through a decision making syntax for this program, which is basically I have a if an expression, then I can do whatever I want to do, and then an else and an end if, and then another thing. So this is used for decision making, right? Branching out your code based on certain decisions, and we did that. Then we wanted to do a loop, which means repeatedly do the same thing. And in this loop, we wanted to fill the date and the month. And since the end range, the range for this code is dynamic, we actually wanted to calculate that, right? And that's why we started with the starting number. We calculated the ending number. Of course, we debugged it to -2. And then we calculated the range string using the starting number and ending number. And we used that range string in the loop. Okay. Then we also did another thing where for the month address, in each time in the loop, we are calculating the range address for the month using the C plus whatever that month number is, and we are setting the month number that way. And once we do that, this whole thing works the way you wanted it to work, right? Now, very quickly, since I've taught you everything, there's only one thing that I felt like it's better to teach, so that when you play around with your program, you know what to do. Now, I can take a range and actually call clear, and it will clear everything, right? And in here, I'm just going to do a range of A19, right? A19 till the range of C, and I'll give really a random number, okay? Now, nobody is going to take a loan for 2000 months, okay? Making an assumption. So I'm taking a range object from A19 to C200, well, C2000, really long range, and I'm going to say dot clear. I do need to give this in quotes. So that means that it's going to take from A19 to C2000, it's going to take that area. Before we can do any calculation, it will automatically clear. Basically, whatever I did using the Control-Shift down arrow key and deleting it, it will automatically do. The reason I want to do this is that in the beginning of the program, if you do that, it clears it and then you can do your stuff. So in that way, so now let's say that I'm going to change this to 5 months only, or 5 years, okay? And then stop it and run the macro. See, what it does is it clears the stuff before, and it actually cleared the first one too, which it should not. But it goes on for 5 years, but it automatically did the clearing, right? Now, let's fix that. Why it cleared that is because I should have done this long before I modified the C19 area, right? So I'm going to put this clear code here. And then I'm going to reset and I'm going to run it again. Okay, so now it took the start date, it does everything, and it did the calculation for 5 years. Okay, now let's do one more. Maybe I want to do only 3 years. I'm giving lesser and lesser values because I want to see if the clearing happens. Okay, only for 3 years. Yes, only for 3 years, and then the rest is not populated, right? So I think we mastered this idea of inner loop, putting the date and month. Now in the next class, two things I want to teach you. One is so it's okay to click on the macro and run the macro. But generally, if it is a software, you would like to have a button. And the button, when you click on the button, it should run that macro. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. Then the other thing is we are going to fill this loan amount, interest paid, and principal paid. Should be quite easy given all these concepts, right? Given that you learned all these concepts. Now, definitely, this is a lot of information that you need to get in. So please go through the video, make your own notes, write your own code, run it and see. And if you find any issues, errors, please let me know in the comments and I can help you. And you will have to digest this. If you digest this, then I'm telling you that in the future, whenever you are confronted with some kind of Excel coding problems, very, very easy to deal with, because we have, within a very short time, whatever time you have invested, you've learned how to do VBA, how to do statements, how to do expression, how to do mathematical calculations, how to take decisions, and how to do a loop. So please go through it, run it, see if it works, do some research. Even if you find better ways, let me know, and that will really help for you to learn. And by the way, I'll tell you this, when I teach you this, I'm also learning. I'm also getting better, right? So because when I need to explain something to you, that's when I realize, oh, I got to tell them what this is. You see, then that makes me a better programmer as well as a better teacher. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next class.